Understanding financial health is crucial for resilience. Start by evaluating your net worth. List assets minus liabilities to reveal your financial stance. Next, analyze cash flow. Review income versus expenses to ensure a positive outcome, identifying areas where you can cut back. Confront debt levels by compiling all owed amounts. Prioritize repayment based on interest rates to tackle efficiently. Setting financial goals are also vital. Define clear, achievable targets with specific timeframes. Strengthening financial health involves creating a detailed budget to track spending and increase savings. Building an emergency fund is essential. Aim for 3 to 6 months worth of expenses to cover unexpected events. Lastly, reduce debt through strategic methods and increase your financial knowledge through various resources. This approach lays a solid foundation for enduring financial stability and growth.
Tanja, get us started, because you and your husband retired in your 30s. Sometimes I heard keeping your house at 55 degrees. So you guys are willing to be extraordinary in order to save 30 times your annual spending. What lessons can you share with us on your path to retiring early?
Yeah, it's so funny. The cold house thing tends to be really the thing people want to lead with because it sounds so wacky, which I admit that it is. For those who are seeing the live stream, you can see my wood paneling. We live in the mountains in the Sierra Nevada in California near Lake Tahoe, and it's really cold here in the winter. And because it's a rural area, fuel costs a ton, like to heat the house. And I don't want to pay for that. But we also have environmental beliefs. And so it aligns well with not heating the house too hot. And we realize, we can just wear a lot of sweaters and stuff. But if you know that about us, you probably assume that we never spend money on anything and never travel and only rice and beans. And that stuff is not true at all. We just really believe in picking a couple of areas where you can be, a phrase that I think some folks have used is selectively hardcore. And I really like that, of picking one or two things where you can be maybe a little wacky, but you don't have to be like that in every part of your life. I have lots of tips I can share, but I think it's kind of a fun challenge to think about to kick us off to say, is there one thing in your life where you could be that wacky person? But just one thing, or maybe two things, but not all the things. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing proposition. I think that's the biggest lesson that I repeat over and over, both to other people and to myself, is just, okay, we can trim this back without having to live like hermits in all areas.
I like that one. And actually, as an experiment one time when my wife went away on a trip somewhere for like 3 or 4 days, as an experiment, I challenged myself by keeping the heat very, very low. And I put on a ski hat and I had like 2 blankets and I survived. And then I forgot to check the heating bill to see if it actually had an impact or not. My wife got back and she was like, "You're crazy." I said, "Well, it's kind of fun."
I think that's a great experiment. I think, a lot of folks don't give themselves enough credit for their ability to adapt. And this applies, I think, for a lot of folks where it's hot in the summer and you might use air conditioning. We don't have air conditioning in the mountains. And so, not that we don't need it, but we kind of suffer through. But people who live in humid places and hot places, I think trying to crank it up gradually so that you're using less and less is a good challenge. But I think the best tip for folks who want to play the thermostat game is go gradually. Like, you just plummeting it for 4 days, you have to give yourself time to work up to it. Like, every fall, we have to give ourselves a couple of weeks when we're pretty uncomfortable. And some days we're cranking it back up to 60 because we're not quite adjusted yet. So I think just know that that's par for the course.
I like the experimentation.
I'm laughing because my mom is staying with us right now. My mom is 80. She had knee replacement surgery in February, and we brought her here to the Houston area to have the surgery and to make sure that she recuperates well before she goes back to Georgia in June. And my mom likes the house hot, like really super warm. And we're already in an area that is warmer than her area in Metro Atlanta. But she keeps telling us this house is way too cold. So I went to the store. I bought her sweaters. I'm giving her blankets and all of this. Yeah, it's a funny thing to do when you have people who have different, temperatures and affinity towards, hot or cold, so.
And we have to live with our families.
Yes.
Yes, and you want to get along with everybody.
You want to get along, yeah. So, balance keeping the peace and saving the money. I don't know, so.
Lynnette, in your book, Bounce Back, you go through 10 common challenges people face in their day-to-day financial lives. How does one define and develop resilience?
Well, in Bounce Back, I do talk about these 10 areas. And I call them the dreaded Ds: downsizing from a job, divorce, death of a loved one, disability, disease, debt, damaged credit, dollar deficits, natural disasters, and then discrimination. And one of the things that all of these challenges share in common are the strategies and the prescriptions for how people recover and achieve resilience sooner and better. And one thing we know from a body of research into resilience, et cetera, is that it's not just about the individual kind of gutting it out, even though grit and personal fortitude play a role, but it's also about support. It's about the structures, the systems that people have in place that give them the capacity for resilience. And so I really took pains in Bounce Back to let the first couple of chapters not really deal with money at all. The first couple of chapters are focused on emotional and sort of mental health and well-being for the individual overall, talking about self-care, the importance of connection and having the right people in your life, those kinds of things. And so I think all of those, whether it's having the resources, the social connections, the information that people might need, et cetera, having all that at your fingertips, that is what helps to build capacity. Certainly far more than just kind of willpower or internal kind of fortitude.
I love the idea of building capacity. Denise, drawing from the lessons in your book, because you do lean into like the cultural background and how that influences. So I'm curious, like for an individual from a diverse cultural background, how should they approach evaluating their financial health effectively?
I would say, first off, to know what's so with your finances and the environment you're in. So one of the things that I learned from my parents, since they're Taiwanese immigrants, they came as basically students, was to look at how you gain wealth where you are in the environment you're in. So in Taiwan, it's a different game than in the US. And they ended up asking each other questions, asking of the community, and doing their own research in a way that I think a lot of Americans might not go to do because they just live here and they think that they take it for granted how the system works or does not work for them, such that when immigrants come, they're learning afresh. They have a blank mind about it and they're just gathering information. And I think in that way, my parents had that advantage of receiving that information. The ocean accepts all rivers is a proverb in the culture, which means you just have a willingness to take it all in. Mm-hmm. And then you work with what you've received. So you don't filter right away. You take it all in and then you go from there. And that's something that I think helped them to understand that 401ks are a vehicle that you have to proactively contribute to save for yourself. My mom was an entrepreneur, so she had a small business and she created the safe harbor retirement for her employees to protect them in a way where they didn't even know to protect themselves necessarily. She might have, a 19-year-old intern who doesn't know the value of such a thing, where he doesn't have to contribute anything. And she can just give him cash, but he doesn't know he has to sign up for it proactively to get it. And she would chase him to make him do it because that's who she is. She's a caretaking person. And so these kinds of things like insurance, that they're a vehicle to assure you financial safety in a way that you wouldn't otherwise be able to afford if you just were saving money for yourself for a situation to occur. So insurance is actually it's almost like a hack, right? To get more money or access to money in the event of an emergency. That's what insurance is. And so that's kind of something that I think my parents really understood early on and imparted to us. A lot of that learning, but also the habits in the culture that we have is very focused on saving, right? Don't spend outside of your means. And it's common in a lot of cultures, I think, but they really lived it. My parents did not come from a kind of a refugee background. They came for the opportunity, but a lot of immigrant backgrounds do come from a refugee situation. So the mindset is different, but the savings mindset is always there. And my parents' willingness to delay that gratification and just, afford the house they could afford at the time that they were living there in order to build to get to the next big house, and so taking that patience along with them. A lot of the proverbs of the culture that's how I titled the chapters of my book. It's by proverb, because the lessons there are for just setting yourself up to succeed by understanding where you are first, and then using the tools available to you that are around you. Yeah.
I love how your mom helped others and inspired you to continue doing the same. And your mention of insurance is the perfect segue for segment 2.